Hey, everybody. Super excited for this chat today with an industry legend, Scott Brinker, the voice behind ChiefMartec, helping define how modern marketing operates in a world that's defined by AI these days. Scott, how are you?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Well, great to be here. Special Boston edition here on this dreary Boston spring day. How do you describe your work at ChiefMartec, your body of work, and yourself lately?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I started out as an armchair analyst, but really as an advocate for this intersection between marketing and technology for goodness, like 20 years now. As of the start of this year, I've actually made this my full-time vocation. So I think I moved from armchair analyst to, dare I say, just analyst of the Martech world.
Fantastic. Congratulations on that. And we'll dive right into the topic du jour. Of course, we've gone from Martech stacks, which you have documented better than anyone in the industry as an analyst, to AI ecosystems. What is the shift? What's happening? What's maybe happening that leaders aren't fully grasping right now?
Well, I would say one thing is, as is often the case in marketing's evolution, we seem to keep adding new things without necessarily getting rid of anything we had before, both in our responsibility set, but even today in the tech stack. I mean, the truth is that, most people's Martech stack, the core applications and platforms that they've had for the past few years, most of them still have all of those in place, but now they've layered on top of that, a bunch of new like AI specialist tools. They're certainly using Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT. There's agents that, either people are buying or they're starting to build themselves. And so I actually think at the moment, the tech stack is probably its messiest it's been in a while, which is saying something. But I think I'm a glass half full sort of person. I just think this is like we're going through a bit of a liminal period here where marketing, and then as a result of it, like the operations and technology infrastructure supported, it is going to change, but this stuff doesn't change overnight. It's evolutionary, and we're in I don't know, what's the thing with the caterpillar and the butterfly? Chrysalis, we're in that sort of like stage where we're being transformed into something very different, but it's kind of the soup at the moment.
And you're infamous for your Martech landscape, which all marketeers are familiar with, overwhelmed by. Is it possible even to define what a modern Martech stack looks like in 2026 today?
I mean, there tend to be certain like just foundational pieces that have been around for a while. Almost every business has, right? It's basically like, all right, we've got something that is the system of record for the core customer data, in B2B that tends to be a little bit more CRM. In B2C, it tends to be a little bit more like, the CVPs, customer data platforms. We almost all have some sort of system that we're using to orchestrate the things like the email campaigns and increasingly like, messaging campaigns, classic marketing automation or customer engagement platform. We almost all have something that we're running as like our web platform, whether you call it a CMS or a DXP or something like that. But once you get beyond that sort of core, triumvirate of, those three systems, you just get into a whole lot of variation, partly based on like the industry and like, what they're trying to do, who their customers are, partly based on their maturity, the size of the team. There are things that more mature and more sophisticated teams, particularly in things like the tech industry or some of these things, like amazing stuff, but for say a smaller group that's, got one person like holding together the marketing operations team with, rubber bands and chewing gum. Like they're not, they don't have the time or the bandwidth to be able to do some of that.
Yeah, great point. And let's talk about the people side of the equation. How, in your opinion, your unique point of view as Gen AI tools, how are they changing the role of the marketer day to day generally?
I mean, for those who are leaning into it, it's an incredible accelerant for a lot of things, that people want. Like once you become familiar with these tools and how to do it, again, the things that marketers marketers have both, like, the idea and then the ability to execute on it. And one of the things I've always admired about marketers as a class is they are a font of phenomenal ideas. That's one of the things I just love about marketing. But the execution work and just the sheer time and materials to execute those ideas is almost always where the bottleneck has been. And in a lot of things now, people who are really starting to get good at mastering a lot of these AI tools are just able to shrink, the time and effort required on the execution, so they get to do a lot more ideas. Now that's great for the people who are leaning into that. There's still a lot that, to be honest, I mean, this is human behavior. It just change is hard. A lot of people tend to be reluctant to wait, I've always done it this way and I'm really good at doing it this way. Now I have to step away from that. I have a lot of empathy for that. But yeah, it's one of the reasons why you have the marketers who are posting on LinkedIn who are the ones oh yeah, no, we've got this. I've got 5 skill files. I've got 20 agents running all this. And then you've got the vast majority of other people who are okay, well, this is interesting, but I'm going to need to take this a little step at a time. I mean, you tell me, but I kind of feel like we don't really even have any precedent for having this much change thrown at us at such velocity in such a compressed time period that I don't know. I think, I don't know, it sounds trivial to say it, but it's almost like the change management of this feels like the hardest mountain to climb.
Indeed, yes. I feel like Charlie in the chocolate factory every day, just with all the new toys and shiny things. And back to the enterprise where, large businesses are looking, evaluating, investing in tools. Do you think they're over-investing in some areas or maybe under-investing in certain areas? Do you have a view of where the dollars are going now?
I mean, I would say in the few years around the pandemic and after that, there was definitely overinvestment because people were in a little bit of a panic mode of hey, listen, that 10-year digital transformation project we wanted to do, okay, kind of have to do that more in 10 days. It was actually pretty remarkable how quickly so many businesses did actually adapt in that, environment under that pressure, but they did it so in a very often chaotic way. And so, as we sort of came out on the other side of that in 2022 and 2023, people were like, oh, all right, we could probably use some spring cleaning and some rationalization of this tech stack. And I sort of feel like over the past couple of years, for the core Martech stack, most companies have gotten a lot more disciplined about okay, do we really need this tool? Where are we getting value? Are these things redundant? But of course, just as we sort of get our arms around, the practices for rationalizing that, this whole AI thing, very often that is presented top down from the C-suite or the board of you just need to do more with AI. We don't know what you would do with AI, but you need to do more with AI. Combined with the fact that there are actually a lot of legitimate innovations, that are happening out here on the edge, is I think while we've been rationalizing the stack as we used to know it, we're now in a bit of a mode of, adding a lot more in this, again, sort of experimental, exploratory stage of figuring out okay, what does this make possible? What's actually going to work? So I don't actually think it's a bad thing. I think it probably is what we should be doing at this point in time. But, you could probably, we will probably look back at this period a couple of years from now and be well, maybe we kind of overinvested in, some of these other things that we ultimately didn't need.
For sure. Certainly my CFO, otherwise known as my wife, isn't happy with the amount of tokens and apps I'm subscribing to and using on a daily basis. But that's just me over-investing perhaps in the latest shiny tools. So when you have these tools, how do you balance automation with maintaining, I guess, the authentic brand voice and the creativity that everyone wants to aspire to? I, for example, am busy today, be back-to-back meetings, so I have Claude out there posting and engaging on my behalf for the day, so I don't miss out, FOMO, on some of the key topics. But what's your perspective on that balance within, the enterprise?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had a lot of conversations with people about this these past few months because one of the things that's realized, is to automate something, you really have to be able to define it. You have to be able to say like, okay, these are the rules. This is my brand voice. These are the guardrails. And the truth is, while lots of business have these things, they don't actually have it well defined on paper, or the digital equivalent of that. It's sort of like, oh well, this is knowledge that are in people's head, and it's sort of like learned behaviors, and it's an amorphous part of the culture. Which, hey, when the humans were just doing all of that kind of worked. But now that we're in a mode where like, okay, we actually do want to turn some of these things over to AI and agents and automation to be able just, again, accelerate it and, get further reach. Yeah, that's part of what people are realizing. It's like, well, okay, well, wait a second. How do we define that? And so I think right now that is that's the gate, is people who haven't actually materially define what those things are. Is they have to start by figuring that out. Otherwise you're sort of like just letting things run. What's instead of buyer beware, it's like agent operator beware, like magic 8-ball. Not quite sure what you're gonna get.
Yeah, do you think this idea of truly autonomous marketing systems, autonomous agents are practical, or is this still overhyped for the next year or two?
A little bit of both. I think, again, those people who know how to configure and monitor and like really very well define, and provide the right sort of context to these things, there are people who are getting success with that. But I think at the moment they are in the minority, because again, it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of structure that marketing hasn't technically needed to do what it's been doing. And so for those people, I think that's where people fall prey to the hype, where they're like, oh yeah, great. Well, I just plug in the agent and I'll just figure that all out. And it's like, well, no, actually the agent isn't just going to figure that all out. But I think the underlying technology and where we can get with this, like these bottlenecks of us getting better at defining how we want automations and AI to run, this is a learnable skill. I do think we are progressing in the right direction on that, but I think it's also fair to say, yeah, for the majority, it's going to take a few years. It's a lot of change.
Yeah, a lot of change for sure. And speaking out of change and the next generation of marketing leadership to kind of manage through that change, what are some of the skills do you think will come in handy? We went through periods where, marketing, they should be data scientists and have degrees in data science. Other times, it's been all the creative and creativity. And, we go back and forth. But what are some of the key skills do you think that marketing leaders need to look out for?
I mean, I still think from a leadership perspective, it's the human dimension to this, both for like really having the empathy and knowing and meeting and understanding your customer, not just looking at their digital body language, but like actually meeting your real customer. I think it's how you develop and organize a team, how you help a team through this incredible change management period. And then it's the fact that marketing doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is part of a larger team and a larger organization. And I think those leaders who become particularly good at the way in which they're able to align and collaborate and coordinate, with their peers, whether it's, in the product and ops or, the sales or finance. These are skills that AI does not magically replace, thank goodness. And then I think at the next level down, it's still a little bit of like a team dynamic. I think you want someone on the marketing team who really does understand the technology here. The sort of Martech marketing ops role, it's more valuable, not less valuable, as we bring more of these things to play. I think having someone who is very strong on the data and analytics side is really important, because again, you can ask AI all sorts of questions that can do all sorts of amazing things, but it's not perfectly reliable either. And so like when you have someone who has the domain expertise or the knowledge and they're doing this is great, because they can get a lot of volume and acceleration out of it, but they also have the experience and the wisdom to be able to say like, oh wait, hang on, this one doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, let me that's very valuable. And then on the creative side, again, the thing that is so exciting about AI is if you have an idea of what you want to bring to life, the ability to use these AI tools to very rapidly even just bring a prototype of, yeah, let's actually see what that would look like. And like, oh yeah, let's have a walkthrough video of how that would be. Even if there's, that's not the production versions you're going to send out to the world, just this ability to take ideas from something amorphous in your brain to something concrete that you can share with people and get feedback on evolve. I think that's great, but it's, to me, still starts with the creative process, of those ideas and a lot of originality that can come from that.
Indeed. Yeah. Just one insight. I've been using ChatGPT and Nano Banana to do really great, complex infographics. Just in the last weeks or month or two, I'd say they've gotten really good to the point of, wow, it would have taken a professional designer many hours, thousands of dollars to create that infographic. And no spelling mistakes, right on visuals. And something has changed in that world, in the design world, where I'm like, wow, this is getting very good. And there are just dozens more examples.
And it's crazy. I mean, the speed at which these models keep getting better. I don't know. There was rumors floating around here, this past week about the next generation model from Anthropic, which I think is people referring to as Mythos. And who knows what this is actually going to be, but sort of the hints are like, oh, you think Claude is good today? Wait till you see what this is. It's really, it is. I find I am constantly in a state of like two competing emotions of just kid in a candy store excitement, and just kid in a darkened room, terrified, of what's around the corner here. And like, yeah, it's some combination of those two.
Indeed. Is there a particular trend in Martech or AI you think will surprise us over the next 12 to 18 months? I mean, beyond better, faster, cheaper, the usual kind of things. Any surprises from your point of view?
I mean, to me, the most interesting thing that is starting to emerge, and I think it's going to grow a lot, is not AI that is being used by marketers. It's AI being used by customers, by consumers. I mean, we already saw this shift, from the old, Google experience, search experience to now AI assistants. And even just that, how disruptive that has been. Well, all right, I say disruptive. To marketers, it's been disruptive because like all of the things we'd instrumented around, like the Google search engine funnel and whatnot, now we have it's something different and we don't have as much visibility and our mechanisms for that change. So for marketing, it's, been disruptive. For customers though, for consumers though, like, oh, wow, I used to have to go through all these various links and figure out what was real and on. And I click through it. Oh, now I just ask this thing questions and then gives me answers. I ask follow-up. This is friggin' wonderful. I think we're going to see a lot more of these sorts of things. Like one I've been looking at, that we're just starting to see emerge is this idea of like everybody is an inbox. Everybody has an absolute mess of stuff that floods at them. Spam filtering alone is not a sufficient thing here. It seems like it's just a matter of time here before like, okay, no, email actually is going to be an agent. And the agent is going to manage this inbox for you. And in many ways, I think just like, the AI assistants, the way they disrupted search, I think they will disrupt email marketing the way that it exists. But I'm not sure that's a bad thing because one of the things is, the problem with email is it's the tragedy of the commons. Marketers who do really good email are actually penalized for the fact that there's all these other people out there using email and they're just absolutely terrible at it. And it's so easy to get lost in that noise. I think actually a little agentic mediation, in this actually might end up making email a more effective channel, for marketers who are doing it well and have true engagement with their customers. But I don't know. Those are the sorts of things where I'm waiting to see what's going to be surprising about how consumers and customers start to leverage AI and what that ultimately does to shift the way marketing has to work.
Yeah, wonderful insight. And I think there's that middle ground of prosumers or, solopreneurs like myself or small businesses that are getting these tools and doing things that would have been impossible for a small business, a micro business to do. And that's just really exciting to see as well. In terms of your own content, I mean, you're everywhere. Any insight into what's working well for you in terms of channels or in terms of formats? Me, for example, really long form video has been just awesome on YouTube, as well as long form blogging, and in my newsletter, it's been great. But what's working for you and others that you work with?
Yeah, well, I would say at the moment I've really been the newsletter that I sort of restarted here at the beginning of the year. Using Beehive as the platform for that. I've been happy with them. I would say it's working at two levels. One, I'm getting back to the roots of what I actually love to do. I actually like long form writing. It's one of my joys. I do not outsource that to Claude because I love it. But also it seems to be where I'm getting the greatest engagement, and the best way for me to actually reach my audience in a more predictable way. Boy, the shifts that have happened in the LinkedIn algorithms, over the past year or so, again, I'm sure there's method to the madness there, but yeah, what used to be a very reliable way of communicating to an audience now feels that, again, it's a little bit of this magic 8-ball of who's going to see that and when. So I don't know. That's sort of where I am. I would love to get more into the video side. I do not do much of that, but the experience you're having is what I hear from a lot of folks, that video has really become one of, if not the most predominant channel for them, to effectively engage.
Yeah, no, it's been great. This will be out on YouTube, on X, on LinkedIn Live, and so look forward to sharing that. Finally, where can people reach you? What sort of consulting are you doing these days? What's your elevator pitch, I guess, as it were?
All right. So my website, and you can get my newsletter on there too, is ChiefMartec.com. And that's ChiefMartec without an H at the end. We can have a discussion on that branding choice. Was it brilliant or terrible? Essentially my elevator pitch is I am a Martech analyst and advisor. From an analyst perspective, it's mostly about these patterns of helping the collective Martech industry just understand what's changing, how do you take advantage of it, how do you move forward, and then I also do some advisory work primarily with other Martech companies and helping them sort of figure out how do they navigate that future forward.
Wow, what a fun job. Thanks so much for catching up. Good to see you. And here's to summer in Boston, which hopefully is not only another few weeks away. And thanks for joining, Scott.
Thanks so much for having me, Evan. Have a good one.
And thank you. And thanks, everyone, for listening, watching. Also, check out our TV show, techimpact.tv on Bloomberg Television and Fox Business. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Scott.
Bye.